I don't appreciate this brother Ceedee Lamb being treated like this. There's no way. You, Jerry Jones, all you're staring at is another season where y'all ain't gonna do but tease everybody into thinking that you might be relevant.
Ceedee Lamb's $136 million injury wasn't bad luck. It was a coaching gamble gone wrong. Forced into the backfield like a running back, Lamb got wrecked. Now whispers say Dallas risked him on purpose, and the names being blamed could flip the Cowboys' locker room upside down. The accusation, when coaching decisions turn catastrophic. The bombshell accusation that's rocking the NFL world, Ceedee Lamb's career-threatening ankle injury, wasn't just bad luck. It was the direct result of questionable coaching decisions that put Dallas Cowboys' most valuable offensive weapon in unnecessary danger. What happened on that fateful September afternoon in 2025 has exposed a brewing controversy that threatens to tear apart the relationship between star players and coaching staff, while revealing the shocking truth about how the Cowboys have been recklessly deploying their $136 million receiver. The explosive incident unfolded during the Cowboys' Week 3 matchup against the Chicago Bears on September 21st, 2025 at a TAN-DT Stadium. What should have been a routine offensive play became a nightmare scenario that would sideline the team's best player for potentially a month or more. But this wasn't just any ordinary football injury. This was the culmination of a dangerous pattern that had been building for years, finally exploding into a controversy that has divided fans, analysts, and even former Cowboys legends.
All right, what's up, homies, and welcome in to the DLLS Cowboys Emergency Pod, because that's what we believe in at DLLS, is if anything happens that is big that you need to know about, we just gonna hit it right that second. And we do have a report from our very own Clarence Hill on a timeline on Ceedee Lamb, and we don't love it.
The shocking details of what transpired reveal a coaching staff that may have prioritized creative play calling over player safety. Ceedee Lamb sustained a high ankle sprain in his left ankle during the first quarter of their Week 3 loss to the Chicago Bears on September 22nd, 2025. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. This wasn't a freak accident during a normal wide receiver route. This was the result of a controversial coaching decision that had critics immediately questioning whether the Cowboys were putting their star player at unnecessary risk. The play in question was a designed handoff play where Lamb lined up as a running back and was tackled awkwardly. During the Cowboys' Week 3 matchup against Chicago, Lamb was positioned in the backfield as the lone running back on second down at their own 37. What happened next would send shockwaves through the NFL community and ignite a firestorm of controversy about coaching decisions and player safety. As quarterback Dak Prescott handed off the ball and Lamb attempted to cut to the right edge, Bears linebacker Noah Sewell made the tackle, twisting Lamb's left ankle in the process. What medical experts described as a classic hip drop mechanism that caused a high ankle sprain. The video footage of the play shows Lamb immediately limping off the field, with the run nullified by offsetting penalties. But what makes this injury truly controversial isn't just the mechanism, it's the context. Lamb had started the season strong with back-to-back 100-yard receiving games, establishing himself as the focal point of the Cowboys' offense. So why would the coaching staff risk their most valuable offensive weapon on a running play when they had capable running backs already performing well? The numbers tell a damning story. Prior to the Bears game, Cowboys running backs were averaging over 5 yards per carry this season, making the decision to use Lamb as a running back seem not just risky, but completely unnecessary. This statistical reality has fueled the growing criticism of the coaching staff's decision-making process.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's been a long time. Matt said all because we wanted to hand the ball off to him. I'm not blaming the coaches for handing the ball to Ceedee. They've done it before and it's worked out fine.
The immediate aftermath of the injury painted a picture of a player who tried desperately to continue playing despite obvious pain. Lamb attempted to re-enter the game in the second quarter, running one route before limping off again and being officially ruled out at halftime. The Cowboys' offense, suddenly deprived of their primary target, managed just 396 total yards, with 151 coming in garbage time during the fourth quarter. The scope of the injury became clear when tight end Jake Ferguson led the team with 13 receptions, and wide receiver George Pickens scored the team's only touchdown, but the unit scored a mere 14 points in a 31-14 defeat. Post-game, Prescott lamented the loss, calling it unacceptable and acknowledging how difficult it was to replace Lamb's production. What's particularly damaging to the coaching staff's credibility is how they've handled the aftermath. Cowboys head coach Brian Schottenheimer defended adjusted the play call without regret, emphasizing Lamb's history of quick recovery and the need for others, like Pickens, Jalen Tolbert, and Ferguson, to step up. Even more controversially, Schottenheimer affirmed that quarterback runs and similar creative plays would continue, highlighting the team's commitment to versatility despite the setback. This defensive stance has only added fuel to the fire. Cowboys legend Michael Irvin was among the most vocal critics, arguing that elite receivers like Lamb should stick to their primary roles to avoid unnecessary risks. Irvin's criticism carries particular weight given his status as one of the greatest Cowboys receivers in franchise history and his own experience wearing the prestigious number 88 jersey. The statistical analysis reveals just how problematic this trend has become. Before the 2025 injury, Lamb had accumulated 46 backfield snaps and 5 carries from the running back position throughout his career. While his career rushing stats reflect moderate success in these roles, with an average of 6.8 yards per carry over his career, analysts argue that these numbers don't justify the injury risk for a player of his caliber and contract value. The controversy deepens when examining Lamb's physical profile compared to other receivers who are commonly used in backfield roles. Analysts note Lamb's build, 6'2", 200 pounds, differs from bulkier widebacks like Deebo Samuel, raising questions about durability and high contact runs. This physical mismatch adds another layer to the argument that using Lamb in the backfield represents poor risk management by the coaching staff. The timing of this injury couldn't be worse for the Cowboys organization. Lamb had just signed a 4-year, $136 million contract extension in August 2024, making him one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL. The fact that such a valuable investment is now sidelined due to what many consider a preventable injury has intensified the scrutiny on the coaching staff's decision-making process.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and also for the concept of trust, right? Like Dak trusts Ceedee with unwavering, trust. I don't know if he trusts George Pickens like that. Yeah, I don't know if he trusts Tolbert like that.
The medical prognosis has only made the situation more dire. Reports indicate Lamb could miss 3-4 weeks, potentially returning around mid-October, such as for the game against the Washington Commanders on October 19th, if recovery progresses well. However, high ankle sprains often heal fully, but can sometimes cause lingering issues, though the team is optimistic about his quick healing. The broader implications of this controversy extend far beyond just one injury. The incident has reopened debates about using skill players in non-traditional roles to avoid injuries, with many pointing to this case as a cautionary tale. The fact that this injury occurred during what should have been a relatively safe handoff play has raised questions about whether any use of star receivers in running situations can be justified. What makes this controversy particularly explosive is the apparent disconnect between the coaching staff's public statements and the reality of the situation. While Schottenheimer continues to defend the decision and promise more creative play calling, the evidence suggests that this approach may be fundamentally flawed when applied to a player of Lamb's value and physical profile. The stage is now set for a deeper examination of how this controversy developed, the historical context of using receivers in backfield roles, and the growing rift between coaching philosophy and player safety that threatens to define the Cowboys' season and potentially reshape how NFL teams approach offensive play calling in the modern era. The pattern, a dangerous history of risky play calling. The shocking injury to Ceedee Lamb wasn't an isolated incident. It was the inevitable culmination of a dangerous pattern that had been building throughout his entire NFL career. What the research reveals is a systematic approach by Cowboys coaching staffs to repeatedly put their most valuable receiver in harm's way, despite mounting evidence that such tactics were both unnecessary and increasingly risky. The numbers don't lie, and they paint a damning picture of organizational decision-making that prioritized creative play calling over player preservation. To understand the full scope of this controversy, we must examine the extensive history of how the Cowboys have deployed Lamb in backfield situations. Since entering the NFL in 2020, Lamb has been utilized in the backfield sporadically throughout his career to add unpredictability to the Cowboys' offense. But what appears to be creative coaching on the surface reveals itself as a pattern of escalating risk when examined through the lens of player safety and contract value. The statistical breakdown of Lamb's career rushing attempts tells a story of increasing deployment in dangerous situations. Prior to the 2025 injury, he had accumulated 46 backfield snaps and 5 carries from the running back position. His career rushing statistics show a troubling trend of increased usage over time, with his rushing attempts reaching their peak in 2023 under McCarthy's play calling, contributing to his All-Pro season. Here's where the controversy deepens. The year-by-year breakdown reveals a coaching staff that became increasingly aggressive in their use of Lamb as a running threat. In 2020, his rookie season, the Cowboys used him cautiously with 10 attempts for 82 yards and 1 touchdown. By 2023, that number had increased to 14 attempts for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns, showing a 40% increase in risk exposure. But the most damning evidence lies in the context of these plays. Snap data from sites like Pro Football Reference show Lamb primarily in the slot, around 30 to 90% of snaps varying by year, but his backfield cameos added an element of surprise, averaging over 8 yards per carry in multiple seasons. The success of these plays, rather than serving as justification, actually makes the coaching decisions more problematic. It suggests the Cowboys became addicted to the results without properly weighing the risks. The medical reality makes this pattern even more concerning.
And Cowboys wide receiver Ceedee Lamb is very lucky he did not dislocate or break his ankle on this play. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Suter, and the goal in this channel is to teach more about the medical side of the sports world.
Dr. Brian Suter's medical analysis reveals just how close Lamb came to a catastrophic injury. The video breakdown shows that Lamb's foot externally rotated, pushing the tibia and fibula apart and putting stress on the high ankle sprain ligament called the AITFL. More alarmingly, the medical expert noted that if the Bears defender had more weight on Lamb's leg, the receiver very well could have broken his leg, broken his ankle, and had a dislocation here similar to what we saw with Dak Prescott. This near catastrophic outcome wasn't just bad luck. It was the predictable result of repeatedly exposing a receiver to running back level contact. The coaching philosophy that led to this moment can be traced back to specific strategic decisions that prioritize short-term offensive creativity over long-term player health. Coaches like Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer employ this tactic to get the ball to their best playmakers in space, creating mismatches and misdirection. The strategic reasoning appears sound on paper. It forces defenses to adjust, potentially drawing linebackers out of position or creating one-on-one matchups. However, what the Cowboys failed to properly account for was the cumulative risk exposure. Analytics suggest a 3.8x higher injury rate for receivers in backfield roles, a statistic that should have been a red flag for any coaching staff managing a player of Lamb's caliber and contract value. The historical context makes the Cowboys' approach even more questionable. This usage echoes Lamb's college days at Oklahoma, where he rushed for 148 yards and a touchdown. But the transition from college to professional football represents a massive increase in the speed, strength, and hitting power of defensive players. What worked in college became exponentially more dangerous at the NFL level. Former Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy's philosophy played a significant role in establishing this dangerous pattern. McCarthy has praised Lamb's positional fluency, noting in 2022 that the team anticipates double teams on him and must create opportunities accordingly. This quote reveals a coaching mindset that viewed creative deployment as necessary, but failed to properly weigh the risks against the benefits. The transition to Brian Schottenheimer as head coach in 2025 only intensified these dangerous tendencies. Schottenheimer's stance suggests continued experimentation, but fan pressure and Lamb's recovery could influence adjustments. His post-injury comments defending the play call show a coaching staff that remains committed to this risky approach despite the obvious consequences.
He ain't playing this week. I don't give a damn what he says. Okay, he ain't playing next week either. It's going to be a little while before Ceedee Lamb is back there on the football field. And he looked like he was in great spirits.
The eyewitness account from the reporter who helped Lamb leave the building paints a stark picture of the injury's severity. The description of Lamb using a one-legged scooter and being in a boot contradicts any suggestion that this was a minor injury that could be quickly overcome. But perhaps the most damaging evidence against the coaching staff's approach lies in the comparative analysis with other NFL teams. Teams like the San Francisco 49 ERs with Samuel or the Miami Dolphins with Tyreek Hill frequently employ similar plays, but these teams typically use receivers with different physical profiles and in more limited situations. The Cowboys' usage of Lamb was both more frequent and more risky than industry standards. A Yahoo Sports piece notes the Cowboys' creative ways to unleash Lamb, leading to explosive outputs like his 466 yards over 3 games in 2023. But this success metric ignores the mounting injury risk that was building with each additional exposure. The financial implications make this pattern even more indefensible. When examining the timeline of Lamb's backfield usage against his contract negotiations, a disturbing picture emerges. Lamb's usage peaked during his contract year when the Cowboys were trying to maximize his production to justify a massive extension. After signing his $136 million deal, the logical approach would have been to protect that investment, not continue exposing it to unnecessary risk. The injury history adds another layer to this controversy. Lamb's career has been marked by multiple ankle-related issues, including sprains in 2021 2021 and 2023. Despite this history of lower body injuries, the coaching staff continued to deploy him in situations that specifically targeted those vulnerable areas. Medical experts have repeatedly warned about the cumulative effects of such injuries. High ankle sprains can create lasting instability and increased susceptibility to re-injury. Yet the Cowboys' play calling showed no adaptation to account for these medical realities. The most revealing aspect of this entire controversy may be the coaching staff's reaction to criticism. Schottenheimer's post-injury press conference, where he expressed no regrets about the play call, demonstrates a fundamental disconnect between coaching philosophy and player welfare. His promise to continue using such plays suggests an organization that has learned nothing from this preventable injury.
Jeremy said, Jerry not going to pay anyone now. Everyone he pays gets hurt. And yeah. Jerry also said Ceedee thinks he'll be good to go next week before we got this actual report. Just keep that in mind anytime Jerry talks. Duron planned was going to play this game against Chicago.
The broader NFL community's reaction has been swift and damning. Fan discussions on platforms like X have questioned the logic given running backs 5+ YPC average, while analysts like Michael Irvin have criticized the lack of strategic justification. The consensus among experts is clear. This injury was preventable and resulted from poor decision-making by the coaching staff. The pattern that emerges from this analysis is one of organizational failure at multiple levels. From the initial decision to frequently use Lamb in backfield roles, to the failure to adapt after previous ankle injuries, to the doubling down after the latest catastrophic outcome, the Cowboys have demonstrated a systematic disregard for player safety in pursuit of offensive creativity. As we move forward to examine the fallout from this controversy, the evidence suggests that this incident represents more than just one bad play call. It reveals fundamental flaws in how the Cowboys organization approaches risk management and player development that could have long-lasting consequences for both Ceedee Lamb's career and the team's future success. The fallout, consequences, criticism, and career implications. The explosive aftermath of Ceedee Lamb's injury has sent shockwaves through the NFL world, exposing deep fractures within the Cowboys organization and igniting a firestorm of criticism that threatens to define not just this season, but the future relationship between star players and coaching decisions across the league. What began as a single controversial play call has evolved into a comprehensive indictment of organizational priorities, risk management, and the fundamental question of whether creative play calling can ever justify putting franchise cornerstones in unnecessary danger. The immediate consequences of the injury have been devastating for the Cowboys' offensive capabilities. With Lamb sidelined, the Cowboys will rely more heavily on other pass catchers like Jalen Tolbert, Brandon Cooks, and tight end Jake Ferguson to fill the void in the passing game. But the numbers tell a stark story about just how irreplaceable Lamb has become to this offense.
All right, let me say you this. Ali. If the goal is glory,
I want me some glory hole.
what if I told you that for these 3 to 4 weeks that Ceedee's out, that this defense is going to hold it down?
All right, man, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm with Jesse on that.
I'm out. I'm out, dog.
The statistical reality of Lamb's absence is staggering. Through the first 2 weeks of 2025, he led the team in targets, receptions, and yards, building on his 2024 All-Pro season. 135 catches, 1,749 yards, 12 TDs. His production level had established him as not just the Cowboys' primary offensive weapon, but one of the elite receivers in the entire NFL. The cascading effects of his absence became immediately apparent. Without Lamb, quarterback Dak Prescott will lean on secondary options. Tight end Jake Ferguson, who saw a team-high 14 targets in Week 3 after Lamb's exit, 13 receptions, 86 yards, emerges as a primary beneficiary. However, the drop-off in talent and production capacity represents a massive blow to the team's championship aspirations. The criticism from Cowboys legends has been particularly brutal and revealing. Cowboys legend Michael Irvin was among the most vocal critics, arguing that elite receivers like Lamb should stick to their primary roles to avoid unnecessary risks. Irvin's condemnation carries exceptional weight. As a Hall of Fame receiver who wore the same number 88 jersey, his criticism represents a direct challenge to the current coaching staff's competence. But Irvin wasn't alone in his harsh assessment. The broader NFL community has rallied around the position that this injury represents a fundamental failure of organizational priorities. Analysts note Lamb's build, 6'2", 200 pounds, differs from bulkier wide backs like Deebo Samuel. And with Cowboys running backs averaging over 5 yards per carry this season, the play seemed deemed unwarranted. From both a strategic and safety perspective, the financial implications of this controversy cannot be overstated. Lamb had just signed a 4-year, $136 million contract extension in August 2024, making him one of the most expensive receivers in NFL history. The fact that such a massive organizational investment is now compromised due to what many consider preventable injury has intensified questions about the coaching staff's judgment and priorities.
We are making everybody look great. So, come on now.
I appreciate what you tried to do. Ali, I don't appreciate you tearing down everybody's hopes and dreams. And it was good to see everybody.
Our hopes and dreams are full now.
The coaching staff's response to the criticism has only made the situation worse. Head coach Brian Schottenheimer expressed no regrets about the play call, noting Lamb's quick healing ability and stating the team would continue such plays. This defiant stance in the face of obvious evidence and expert criticism has further inflamed the controversy and raised questions about the coaching staff's ability to adapt and learn from costly mistakes. The medical prognosis adds another layer of concern to the situation. Reports indicate Lamb could miss 3-4 weeks, potentially returning around mid-October, but high ankle sprains often heal fully, but can sometimes cause lingering issues. The uncertainty around the timeline and potential for long-term complications makes the coaching decision even more questionable in retrospect. Perhaps most damaging to the organization's credibility is the historical context of Lamb's injury profile. His career has been marked by multiple ankle-related issues, including sprains in 2021 and 2023. The fact that the coaching staff continued to expose a player with a documented history of ankle problems to additional ankle injury risk through backfield carries demonstrates a fundamental failure in medical and strategic planning. The broader implications for player-coach relationships across the NFL cannot be ignored. This controversy has sparked league-wide discussions about the balance between creative play calling and player safety. Other star receivers are likely watching this situation closely, potentially influencing their own contract negotiations and relationships with coaching staffs. The fan reaction has been swift and brutal, with many calling for coaching changes and organizational accountability. Social media has been flooded with criticism of the decision-making process, with fans pointing to the obvious statistical evidence that made the play call unnecessary given the running back's success. The impact on team chemistry and morale cannot be understated. The Cowboys' offensive struggles post-injury, managing only 14 points against the Bears, underscored Lamb's irreplaceable value. Players throughout the locker room are likely questioning whether the coaching staff can be trusted to protect their health and careers. Looking at the long-term career implications for Lamb himself, this injury represents more than just a temporary setback. High ankle sprains can create lasting instability and increase susceptibility to re-injury, potentially affecting his playing style and effectiveness for years to come. The fact that this injury was sustained in a non-essential role rather than while performing his primary function as a receiver adds insult to injury. The organizational response has been equally problematic. Owner Jerry Jones's initial comments about the injury and play call showed a disconnect from both the medical reality and fan sentiment. This pattern of organizational tone deafness has been a recurring theme in Cowboys controversies, but rarely has it involved such clear-cut evidence of poor decision-making. The broader NFL community's reaction has been telling. Former players, analysts, and medical experts have uniformly criticized the decision, creating a rare consensus around the idea that this injury was both preventable and inexcusable. This level of unified criticism is unusual in a sport where controversial plays are often defended by various stakeholders. The precedent this sets for future play-calling decisions is perhaps the most significant long-term consequence. Will the Cowboys continue to risk their most valuable players on creative but dangerous plays? Will other teams learn from this cautionary tale, or will they continue to push the envelope until they face their own preventable catastrophes? The season-long implications are already becoming clear. With Lamb expected to miss at least several weeks during a crucial part of the schedule, the Cowboys' playoff hopes may hinge on their ability to adapt without their best player. The irony is palpable. A coaching decision designed to maximize offensive creativity has instead severely limited the team's offensive capabilities at a critical juncture. As this controversy continues to unfold, one thing has become crystal clear. The Ceedee Lamb injury represents far more than a single unfortunate play. It has exposed fundamental flaws in organizational decision-making, coaching philosophy, and risk assessment that may define the Cowboys' future for years to come. Whether the organization can learn from this costly mistake and adapt its approach to player safety, or whether they will continue down this dangerous path, remains to be seen. The fantasy football implications have created another layer of fallout that demonstrates the far-reaching consequences of this decision. Fantasy football owners are advised to stash Lamb on benches rather than drop him, given the 3-4 week timeline, but to seek short-term replacements. The economic impact extends beyond just the Cowboys organization to millions of fantasy players who built their teams around Lamb's expected production. The coaching staff's credibility has been severely damaged by their handling of both the initial decision and the subsequent response. Schottenheimer's doubling down on the strategy, despite the obvious consequences, has raised questions about whether he possesses the judgment necessary to lead an NFL franchise. When a coach refuses to acknowledge obvious mistakes, it creates a culture where dangerous decisions are likely to be repeated. Perhaps most tellingly, the injury has reignited broader conversations about player empowerment and the right of star athletes to refuse certain play calls based on safety concerns. While Lamb hasn't publicly criticized the coaching decision, the subtext is clear. Players may need to become more assertive about protecting their own careers from coaching staff decisions that prioritize scheme over safety. The precedent this controversy sets extends far beyond Dallas. Other NFL teams are undoubtedly reviewing their own usage of star players in high-risk situations, and agents representing top receivers will likely include specific language in future contracts limiting their clients' exposure to unnecessary danger. The Ceedee Lamb injury may well mark a turning point in how the NFL approaches player safety in creative play calling. The ultimate irony in this entire situation is that the Cowboys' quest for offensive creativity has instead severely limited their offensive capabilities. By trying to maximize Lamb's impact through risky deployment, they've instead eliminated his impact entirely during a crucial stretch of the season. It represents a perfect encapsulation of how overthinking and overcoaching can produce results that are directly opposite to the intended outcome.
You guys all have a great day, and we're going to whoop the Packers this weekend. Cowboys by 40, all right? Peace out, everybody. Remember, you have no idea what anybody's going through.
As the Cowboys attempt to navigate the remainder of their season without their best offensive player, the full consequences of this controversial decision will continue to unfold. The question now isn't just whether Lamb will return to full health, but whether the organization will demonstrate the wisdom to prevent similar catastrophes in the future. The Ceedee Lamb injury controversy stands as a stark reminder that in the NFL, the line between creative genius and reckless endangerment can be razor thin, and that the consequences of crossing that line can define careers, seasons, and organizational legacies for years to come. Only time will tell whether the Cowboys have learned from this costly lesson, or whether they're destined to repeat the same dangerous patterns that led to this preventable catastrophe. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.